Hey guys, just before I crack on with the video, I would like to draw your attention to a podcast myself and a few friends of mine have decided to start. It's over on the YouTube channel Project Chronicle. I will of course link to it down in the description below. Have a listen to the pilot, and if you like it, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're hoping to do them weekly, although we're going to have the occasional themed podcast that falls on a weekday as well. Thanks very much for watching. Go and check it out and subscribe if you like it, and on with the video. Hey guys, so as part of my 5,000 subscribers special, I'm going to be continuing to answer your questions. Today's question comes from Fernando Rivera. Do you think Linux desktop user base will ever surpass Windows? Now, that is one hell of a question, and it's full of ifs and buts, but please bear with me. So, as it currently stands, Linux is a very small part of the desktop market, and that's largely down to the fact that it is an operating system for computer savvy people. There's not really any way to sort of sugarcoat that. I wish Linux was more accessible. Part of the premise of this channel is to make Linux more accessible to a wider range of people. I feel that I've still got some way to go in that department, and I do often feel that this channel does get bogged down in sometimes the politics and the nitty-gritty of it all, and I really enjoy that side of things. So maybe I'm sort of struggling to fulfill that particular goal that I actually set out within this channel, but it's still there nevertheless. And I think that might be a bit of a decent metaphor for the Linux community in a wider capacity as well, is that people who are involved with Linux and involved with creating Linux are so passionate about the software itself and the intricacies and the politics and the history behind it that sometimes it's very difficult to convey the relevance of all of that to, the man on the street. To people who aren't really that interested in how computers work. To people that just want to load something on their machine and go. That being said, I am not ruling it out, right? Now, as it currently stands, Windows, is it easier to use? Well, that might even be arguable, but there are enough people running Windows that the community support just is 10 times larger than Linux could ever dream to be, as it currently stands. So even though Microsoft's support might be pretty damn shoddy, there's always someone who has run into the same problem, because Windows is a pretty standardized operating system. There's only a handful of versions of Windows, and most, there are going to be millions of people running each one. When it comes to Linux, you have got more than 300 active distributions, each with their own little intricacies, each with their own repositories and dependency issues. And in regards to that, then they've got, sometimes there are distributions that update every 6 months. With Ubuntu, you can have a problem 6 months down the line that you wouldn't have even conceived of 6 months prior to it. And I think that's kind of part of a problem. I think that maybe there are some things that we need to address in that department. Maybe Ubuntu might want to switch or put a lot more focus on their long-term support releases. I've noticed that they've actually been shifting in that direction. Maybe more distributions perhaps might want to go down that route in a more assertive manner. And I think there are things like this are going to need to be addressed when it comes to and making the support for Linux just as easy and consistent as standard as possible. Linux, of course, also has lots of different package managers. So an application that's bundled for Ubuntu might not work on, well, it won't work on something like an RPM-based distribution like Fedora or Red Hat, and it might not even work on a distribution like Debian. I remember when I was trialing out the alpha version of Open Broadcast software, which is some software that you can use to do screen recording and streaming on Twitch, that it didn't work for 14.10 for a long period because they were only testing on support long-term support releases of Ubuntu. So that again would be a real problem to people who are new to Linux. And there are a lot of intricacies to Linux that you kind of need to at least be willing to learn in order to actually get your system working on a par with a Windows system. That being said, once you know what you're doing, you've got a system that far surpasses Windows. But again, it's an if, isn't it? Now, in regards to its actual success, it depends what you count as a desktop, because we could very well see effectively laptops in a couple of years' time using Android, maybe with touch screens, and they could very well be a hybrid between a mobile device and something that you might use to do office work on. We've already kind of seen Windows devices try and push in that direction, so there's nothing to say that there could very well be Android-based devices that do a similar thing. And if that's the case, could we start seeing desktop-esque versions of Android? And I think that that's I would be surprised if there wasn't an attempt to do that. And in that case, I think that there will be a very real case that the sort of the desktop market, and I think I'm probably really including laptops into that as well, could very well surpass the Windows user base. Again, a lot of it depends on what Windows are going to do. Windows, of course, have brought in an app store, which I haven't used, but then again, Windows is like on a secondary partition that I dual boot that I haven't booted into in goodness knows how long anyway. But in regards to but in regards to Windows, if they continue to make daft decisions, which there's nothing to say that they won't, and that there are some good sort of mobile-esque based alternatives that could possibly shift into the desktop market to fill that space, I think that there's a very good possibility that Android, which is Linux, is as Linux as anything else. I mean, you can get Android off distrowatch.com, and I think last time I checked it was in the top 20, quite possibly might even have made the top 10 by the time this video goes out. So yes, there is definitely a possibility. There's definitely a realistic possibility. I've also heard stories from you guys down in the comments section about having old netbooks which you've managed to revive just by installing Android onto them. So again, if that is some kind of trend that a company wishes to market, then who's not to say that, again, Android won't get another big boost of success. But basically, if Linux was to surpass the desktop market, it would be because mobile devices are becoming bigger and more desktop-like, rather than something like Linux Mint or Ubuntu coming in, because Linux Mint or Ubuntu are still operating systems for advanced users. Whether or not we like it, that's kind of the case. And then Arch is for the advancedest of the advanced user, really. So yeah, also I think the Steam machine might determine quite a lot of success as well. If the Steam box takes off, we could start seeing people having maybe like desktop machines that are Steam boxes. So whereas you guys are obviously familiar with the concept of the gaming PC, that could be replaced by the Steam box. So you would still have your mouse, keyboard, monitor set up in a desktop style environment, but you'd be running a Steam box instead of a Windows box. In that case, yeah, if you count that as a desktop machine. But I think the concept of the desktop machine is going to be reduced to, again, advanced users on a wider capacity anyway. I was reading an article in The Guardian about how more and more people how the desktop market is actually going down in favor of things like the tablet market. Now, I do not like using my tablet for anything more than casual social media kind of stuff, you know, Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Maybe reading articles on Feedly and whatever. I couldn't imagine doing my taxes on it or anything like that. That to me just it sounds like a nightmare, but apparently more and more people are doing it, and maybe it's because my tablet's actually quite a small one. Maybe bigger tablets are easier to use in regards to that. Maybe, you know, they set them up with a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, and maybe that might be something that might be a better solution to the problem or whatever. And in regards to that, I guess what qualifies as a desktop computer, well, the lines are actually quite blurred at this point, or at least they could very well be in the future. Whereas, well, how you know, I mean, obviously I don't think you'd call a tablet a desktop machine, but then you apply a Bluetooth and a mouse to it and set it up on a desk, it ain't a million miles away. If Steam does really well, then Linux is likely to do very well by proxy. And I think that there will definitely be some kind of increase in user base because there are more games available. It'll get just more publicity. I think that quite possibly if there is any kind of anti-corporate movement away from Microsoft, and possibly any kind of anti-big data movement, then Linux is likely to benefit out of that. So I would say that it's certainly likely to swing in the direction of Linux, in the direction of Linux, but then again, who knows what Microsoft are going to do? Microsoft have backpedaled on their 8.1 interface, and they've gone back to things like the taskbar, which is very interesting, actually. I really didn't expect them to do that. I expect that would be more, you know, I would have expected, like, GNOME to be the first to do that, to ditch their full-screen menu interface, because sort of open source communities tend to listen to the user base more than corporate ones. But, hey, there's exceptions to every rule. So, there you go. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. in my mind, I've just put forward quite a compelling argument. Depends what you define as desktop. I certainly think that we're going to be seeing more and more um, Android stuff kicking around. And I think that an Android-based laptop is only a matter of time. And I don't know. So to squeeze out onto the desktop, if you count a desktop as your very standard tower, mouse, keyboard, big monitor, I would say that it's unlikely that we'll see it anytime soon. However, if you see, if you include things like Steam gaming PCs in that, and if you include maybe laptops in that, if when you say desktop, you mean sort of more production machines, then quite likely. But in regards to the traditional desktop, probably not anytime soon. But never, never say never. I have been wrong on many occasions when it comes down to this. Anyway, thank you very much for the question. It's certainly given me a lot to think about. Please let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments section below. And that's about it from me today. Until next time, I've been Chris Ware, and you've been awesome. Take care now.